Hi, my name's Ian Cook, Dr. Ian Cook. I'm a political scientist relying on climate science for the book I wrote called The Politics of the Final 100 Years of Humanity, 2030 to 2130, which I've been going to explain in a series of videos, of which this is the second. So in this video, as I say, I want to explain more or less what led me to write the book. I talked a little bit about that in the preceding video, but this one I want to sort of talk about in terms of the sort of oh my god moment, where I just sort of realised that things were worse than I understood them as being, and that sort of changed everything for me, and ultimately led to me writing this book. Before I get further though, I need to acknowledge that this land was, is and always will be Aboriginal land. Okay, so in this video, first of all I start with where I actually started the book. So, there were some, it was commentary on climate science that I read that sort of shocked me and made things clearly much worse, or made it out clearly to me that things were much worse than I thought, and that we were much closer to a sort of what I refer to as catastrophic human-caused environment change than I assumed we were. So I started off talking about where I started the book, but in the second part I want to talk about where I would start now, because some of the research was out when I wrote the book, but further research happened. And basically I want to look at the IPCC Special Report 1.5 degrees C. And in that report, which came out in 2018, they sort of said, look, we need to do something unusual for the IPCC. So I paid attention to that, and then started looking at subsequent research. That was out when I was writing the book, but I didn't sort of focus on it in the book. And it was only later on that I got to see how that would have been a better place to start if I'd started the book a little bit later. So it was a bit too late by then. Before I get any further, I need to say that all the views expressed in this video and all the other videos in this series are my views in the pieces I publish on Medium. All my own views. I'm fully responsible for them. Especially some of my more controversial views. So, this is sort of the key moment, as it were, in my writing a book, because this was the oh my god moment. I think, as I said in the first video, if I was going to choose 3 letters to sum up the theme of this video and the chapter, the part of the chapter, it's not really fully in the book, it's more or less where the book starts, but then I proceed to do quite different things subsequently. So, there's some of the stuff I'm talking about is in the book today, others, as I was saying, isn't in the book. But yeah, coming back to it, the 3 letters I would have chosen would not be OMG. In fact, if it came down to it, I had to choose, I would choose a 4-letter word. In fact, a third of those 3-letter words that I might otherwise have chosen. But I've decided to try to avoid swearing in these videos, so I'm trying to maximize, I guess, make this open to everybody, because I'm trying to explain the book, which is an academic piece. I'm trying to explain it to people who aren't really interested in academia and what academics are on about, which is totally fine. So, so here we go. I want to proceed. The story starts with a karma. I told you I'm Buddhist and I don't really believe in karma. It's just, it sort of looks so much like a karmic moment. It comes back to that I was talking about before in the preceding video, that this disciplining the undisciplined, where my colleagues had a book contract with Springer, and they're looking for contributors from the various disciplines in terms of what we offered with respect to responsible citizenship, corporate social responsibility, and sustainability. And it was sustainability, I looked at all 3, but there was sustainability research that I was doing that, that set me off. My intention was to sort of put forward in that book that political science is offering was to say that political institutions won't produce the sorts of change necessary to address what I refer to as catastrophic human-caused environment change, because I want to introduce sort of toxicity and species depletion and extinction into this picture, which is captured by climate change. I mean, even ocean acidification, which is where carbon dioxide dissolves into the ocean and turns it acidic, isn't really picked up in the notion of just climate change. There's more stuff going on. So this book was, calls put out, different disciplines to, what did we offer to that book. That's when I started doing the research into the state of the planet, and that's why I wrote the book, okay, and where I started. So I just want to have a little bit a look at what I relied on that led me to think I've got to do something, and writing this book, and I guess making the videos and writing the pieces on Medium were other things that I've done by way of trying to do something. So anyway, where did I start the book? It's with this book, Climate Change: What Everyone Needs to Know, by Joseph Romm. It came out about 2015, 2016. Certainly, I was reading it in 2016, and I read the following: a 4-degree world is not the plausible worst case. I'd only ever been reading about 2 degrees up until that point. I mean, the conversations about when we're going to hit 2 degrees, how do we avoid 2 degrees? Everything I'd been reading was just around 2. I know 4 is just another number, and if you get to 2, then probability of getting a 4 is obvious, but I wasn't thinking about that very carefully. So I read a 4-degree world is not the plausible worst case. Okay, it's the expected outcome of the emissions pathway we are currently on. When I read that, it was, okay, well, if it's not disastrous, I guess, in the sense that it's not disastrous for me. The problem was, and this is, when I read further, this is just the same passage. This is a quotation with which the book starts. It's not properly set off because I didn't pick up the problem with the layout, but this is where it starts. The worst case version would be if the 4-degree world occurred far sooner than expected. Yeah, okay, so far so good. A Royal Society article, Royal Society, the British Royal Society, been around since the 17th century, thereabouts, well established, high status, this is serious scholarship. I mean, they might be climate alarmists according to their climate denialist friends, but they're serious scientists. So I'm reading in this one, a Royal Society article, when could global warming reach 4 degrees C, contains this remarkable finding. So Romm's been reading up, and he's found this piece, and this is what it contains. If we stay near the high emissions pathway, that's wrong. And if carbon cycle feedbacks are stronger than currently modelled, this is the article, which appears less likely but still credible. Okay, so there's an if there, and that's good. Then 4 degrees C warming could be reached by the early 2060s in projections that are consistent with the IPCC's likely range. And 2060s. Now I'm not going to be around the 2060s. I mean that's not what particularly bothered me, but my children are. And this brought the reality of what we're facing just really right into my face. I thought we were talking about 2 degrees sometime, and in the relatively distant future, I guess distant from me, but I'm now reading this stuff talking about 2060, and I'm sitting this in 2060. Now this is oh my God, I get it that there's ifs and I didn't rely on this, in a sense I sort of backed off and went, well, okay, that's the worst case scenario. So as I was explaining in the preceding video, I've used a near worst case scenario. So I'm thinking, oh, well, okay, let's think maybe 4 degrees in 2080, 2090, sometime, in that. And it's this 4 degrees that I tend to focus on and use as a sort of basis for the research in the book. The 4 degrees leads to, obviously, warming. That leads to melting ice, rising sea levels, and desertification, increasing dry lands. More and more parts of the world where we can't grow crops. So that's what I started to think about. I guess I started to do research, thinking, well, what does 4 degrees mean? What does all this mean for the planet? And oh my God, was my response. Now, that's where I actually started. If I was going to start today, or if I started maybe, sort of around when I started making these videos a couple of months ago, when I looked further and did research, thinking, okay, well, I'm going to do updates. So, what's going on? And I wanted to do a public lecture on my book, but this is the middle of COVID, so I couldn't really do one, and I'm still a little bit uncomfortable about that. But anyway, but if I was going to start the book now, or in fact, if I was going to start the videos, really, this is where I'd start. And it's with this, as I was saying, the IPCC's global warming of 1.5 degrees C, a special report they put out. As I say, this comes out in 2018, so it's they're working on it 2017. It's in the pipeline, as it were. So it comes out in 2018. So I've got a sense of this book while I'm writing mine, and I had a sense of its importance, and I didn't really comment too much on it. It wasn't that important to what I wanted to do, because the book is the application of this. It's all triggered by the research that I'm coming across from climate scientists. So anyway, so I encountered this special report, and that's the first thing. Okay, that the IPCC is doing a special report. In the book I write about the conservatism of the IPCC. It's an intergovernmental panel. Okay, intergovernmental. So politicians have sway over not the science so much, but the reporting of the science. And they taught climate scientists some good stuff. They taught them how to speak properly, which I'll talk about in the next video. So there were positives out of that, but in general, it's meant that the IPCC has been very careful, very conservative, and very restrained in the sorts of claims that its members make, or its scientists make, and it makes in these reports. And so when I saw this special report, I was thinking, oh, okay, what's going on here? This is a little bit different. And when you look closely, an IPCC special report on the impacts of global warming of 1.5 degrees C above pre-industrial levels and related global greenhouse gas emission pathways in the context of strengthening the global response to the threat of climate change. And it's this, and it's basically my reading between the lines there, is this is the IPCC saying, no one's listening. We've got more warnings. You've got to do more to try and get action. That no one's taking this problem seriously enough. There isn't enough being done, and so that they're writing this report, and so I'm reading it, and thinking, okay, this is a very interesting moment in terms of where the IPCC is at and what it's trying to say. So this is warning signs, coming out of the IPCC. Unusual for it to sort of, write this. And this is what they produced. Recent trends in emissions deviate from a track consistent with limiting warming to well below 2 degrees. So we're heading to 2 degrees, folks. Okay, and they're going to, warn you about 1.5 to get you to be, okay, scary 1.5, even more scary 2. 4, a whole different ballgame, but we'll get to that later. So, a recent trend in emissions deviate from a track consistent with limiting warming to well below 2 degrees C. Without a sharp decline in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, global warming will surpass 1.5 degrees centigrade Celsius in the following decades. emissions. Okay, so this is, without a sharp decline, do something, is the IPCC. Please, someone out there, do something. Okay, governments, obviously, but voters, putting pressure on governments would be a good thing too. So, okay, without a sharp decline, we're in trouble, leading to crisis after crisis for the most vulnerable people and societies. That is, I guess, obvious in terms of the sort of implication of this sort of finding, but as I say, not a good sign. Yeah. And before I get further, I just want to, Jason Mark wrote a piece in Sierra, and basically, what he was saying is that, we need to explain to people who don't know Celsius, centigrade. I assume there's the same. I've always understood them to be the same. Anyway, 1.5 degrees Celsius becomes a 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit rise in average global temperatures. A 2 degrees Celsius rise is equivalent of a 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit rise. So what I'm basing, what I based the book on was a 7.2 degrees Fahrenheit increase in average global surface temperatures above pre-industrial levels. So that's, for those of you for whom Celsius is not part of your common language, that's the sort of Fahrenheit translation, and it was a good reminder when I was just doing this research that I needed to explain that to other people. Anyways, let's get further in here. And Environmental Research Letters comes out in 2018, at the end of 2018. So we're talking sort of December. It's number 13, so it's late in the year. So the IPCC's reports come out, and this is coming out later. Now this is the editorial from Environmental Research Letters. Global energy growth is outpacing decarbonisation. Forgive me if I don't read out all the authors of that piece. And they wrote, after a 3-year hiatus with stable global emissions. So basically what they're saying here is sort of the rate of increase has flattened out. So instead of greenhouse gas emissions continue to increase, they've stabilised. They're not decreasing. Okay, we're not seeing sort of downward movement. We're just seeing flattening. So after 3 years flattening, stable global emissions, carbon dioxide emissions grew by 1.6% in 2017. Now, as I was saying to you, the IPCC's report's coming out in 2018. They're working on it in 2017. We don't have the results from 2017 until late 2018, which is when they're putting, we're seeing this sort of research come out. So the IPCC doesn't know about this when they're writing, or the scientists who wrote the IPCC's 1.5 degrees special report, they don't know about this. Okay, that's, they're expecting it, I guess, but we don't know this, and so this comes out later. So the IPCC says, in sort of 2017, look out, and in 2017, after us, flattening the curve, it's an overused phrase these days, we're back to increasing emissions. Okay, not exactly what I want to see. And then later on, or the following year, the global carbon budget, which is produced every year, once again, it has to be based on preceding research. So this is about 2018. So this comes out in 2019, and for 2018, the growth in fossil fuel carbon dioxide emissions was about 2.1%. So we've gone 1.6 in 2017 to 2.1 in 2018. Okay, we're in 2020 now. We don't know yet. I don't think we've got the research yet for 2019. But we've got 21% increase. 2.1% increase, reaching 10 gigatons of carbon per year. That's the quantity for the first time in history. IPCC puts out a report in sort of 2018, and that very year we produced the greatest amount of carbon dioxide is emitted into the atmosphere ever. this is a sort of, oh my God. And what exactly does that mean is the sort of next question that I'm interested in. What are the implications? What are the consequences? How does that translate into real action? So I did a little bit of research into that. And now this is Christopher Rose's piece in Science Progress. Only 12 years left to readjust for the 1.5 degree climate change option, says International Panel on Climate Change report. Interesting, not intergovernmental, but it is intergovernmental. Report, panel on climate change report, current commentary. This, as I say, comes out in 2019, only 12 years left. This is IPCC report. So this is about the report I was talking about. Okay, so they're translating that, or they're talking about what are the consequence implications of what's come through there. To meet the 1.5 degrees Celsius target would require the elimination of some 42 gigatons of carbon dioxide globally by 2050. So, I mean, I don't know exactly how much that is, and, this isn't my area, but, it seems like a lot. So I'm thinking, that's, like 10 gigatons went in for the first time, 42 have to come out. I mean, if you think about how much contributed to make 10, it just, okay, a bit mind-boggling. What else? Okay, so can we translate that a little bit more? Okay, a threefold increase in the implementation of low-carbon electricity. 3 times the amount of low-carbon electricity. Elimination of essentially all vehicles that use internal combustion engines. I mean, that's a lot of cars, and trucks, bikes. And it's, like pretty much all of the stuff we drive, fly, etc., is internal combustion engines. And over yet, in another piece, now this was actually published in late 2018, climate change impacts worse than expected, global report warns. Once again, this is the IPCC 1.5 degree report that Stephen Leahy is writing about. And so, what I come across here is, okay, so this is, what does it mean? No home business or industry heated by gas or oil. Okay, no vehicles powered by diesel or gasoline. We sort of had that a little bit in the preceding piece. All coal and gas power plants shuttered. Petrochemical industry converted wholesale to green chemistry. All coal and gas power plants shuttered. Why? No vehicles powered by diesel or gasoline. And heavy industry using carbon-free energy sources or employing technology to capture CO2 emissions and permanently store it. And this is a lot. And I keep reading. Foolishly. So I go further in this article. What do I find? In addition, do I need this? Depending on how fast emissions are cut, not very fast is the answer. Between 0.4 and 2.7 million square miles, 1 to 7 million square kilometres of land may have to be converted to growing bioenergy crops. Okay, that's pretty big. And up to 3.86 million square miles, 10 million square kilometres of forests added by 2050. Added by 2050. I mean, both of those things by 2050, depending on how fast emissions are cut, but not very fast is the answer. So, and it's not just climate. I mean, that's a point I've been trying to make. That's why I refer to catastrophic human-caused environment change, because I've also been, I'm a bit sensitive to issues around toxicity, and so I've been aware of increasing levels of toxicity, and species depletion and extinction are other things that I had a sense of. And when I was doing the climate change reading, I came across ocean acidification, which I hadn't heard of before that. And you put that together and you get a package that I refer to as catastrophic human caused environment change. And I use human caused rather than anthropogenic because I want to make sure humans we remind ourselves that it's us, it's we humans who are causing this problem. And it's catastrophic. It's not warming, it's not changing, it's catastrophe. Okay, and it's catastrophic environment, not just climate change. So, so that's why I wrote the book. That's the oh my God moment that led me to sort of write the politics of the final 100 years of humanity, 2030 to 2130. So in this video, as I said, I just tried to explain where I actually started the book, but really where I really want to start it right now. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please follow me on YouTube and the